Good morning, everybody. I know it seems wrong to start a work week on Labor Day, but that's how the schedule works out, so I guess we'll have to do it. But I do hope all of you are taking a little bit of time today to rest and be with your families, and remember that this is supposed to be a day when you're not working, and to celebrate the other days when you work too hard. But let's put that aside and start the topic for week 3. Our overriding topic this week is a discussion and analysis of two very fundamental legal principles, and those are the principles of jurisdiction and venue. Before I get into what those mean, we're also engaged in another legal principle called case and controversy. And it's those three principles together that allow a lawyer or prosecutor, a party, just to decide where the best place will be to try a case and whether there even is a case to be tried. I'll talk about that as we go along in this video. As you can hear, my voice is still very, very raspy and hoarse, and so I probably won't make this a very long video, but the announcement, the written announcement that goes along with it is fairly detailed. Well, let's talk about what you have to do this week. First of all, you've got two major projects. One is, of course, the discussion board, which will ask that you talk about, that you kind of project yourself into the future and talk about the specialty court that you are most likely to be involved with as you go forward in your professional life. Specialty courts are those courts of limited jurisdiction, not general jurisdiction trial courts, but but courts that have a narrow focus, like a juvenile court or a bankruptcy court or a traffic court or a drug court. These are all examples of courts of limited jurisdiction, otherwise called specialty courts. Now, it depends on what you're going to do as a professional or even in your personal life as to which of those you're most likely to be engaged with as you go forward in time. But just think about it, and even if it's not a realistic projection, even if you just are looking at the list of specialty courts and you see one that particularly interests you, choose that one, analyze it, determine what it does, and how the actions of that court affect the surrounding area where it sits. Often we don't think about, as citizens of a town or city, we don't think about how the courts in that city or town affect our lives, our business lives, our personal lives, the status, the safety of the community. But they do. And so this exercise, this discussion board is asking that you consider that and talk about it. The second project that you have this week is the first step in preparing your final project. It's called Milestone 1. And what Milestone 1 does is ask that you read very carefully the case scenario that we're going to be dealing with in the final project. I cannot stress enough or urge you strongly enough to read that scenario over and over and over and over again until it seems like something real to you, so you know it backward and forward. You need to understand what has happened, the people involved in the scenario and what has happened in the scenario and where the things happen, in order to ask the questions that you're going to have to ask about it. And the first question is asking you to apply, the first milestone is asking you to apply the principles of jurisdiction and venue to the facts in that case scenario. And what that means is you're being asked to think about what has happened in that scenario and try to decide which court would have jurisdiction to try the case or cases that would come out of that scenario. You may find that there's only one case and it'll be tried in one court. You may find that there are more than one, let me give you a clue here. It's a criminal case. So you need to determine what crime or crimes have occurred and which court or courts would have jurisdiction. Then you have to determine the venue. And now I want to discuss what those two terms mean. Jurisdiction is a term that defines the authority a court has to hear a certain kind of case. For instance, a bankruptcy court has jurisdiction to hear and decide cases involving bankruptcy. A traffic court has jurisdiction over traffic cases. But the second principle, venue, narrows that jurisdiction down to a certain geographical area for each of the particular courts that you're talking about. So, for instance, if you are involved in an automobile accident in Greene County, Virginia, let's say you've suffered $40,000 in medical bills and property damage as a result of this accident, and you want to sue somebody, the person who caused the accident, to recover that $40,000 that you have lost. You would research Virginia. You wouldn't do this, but your lawyer would. Your lawyer would research the courts in Virginia to determine which court has jurisdiction to try civil cases for the recovery of money. That court would be the Circuit Court for Greene County. Then, well, I just answered my own second question, but the circuit courts in Virginia have jurisdiction to try that kind of case. But then you have to determine where this case happened to decide which of the circuit courts in Virginia, because there's one in each county, would have venue over that case, which would be the proper venue is a better way to put it, to try that case. And of course it would be the circuit court in Greene County because that's where the accident occurred. Now I've simplified that issue considerably because sometimes there are other factors than where something happened that determine venue, but most of the time, well, in a civil case, there are three principles that govern the proper venue. One is where the event, whatever it is that gave rise to the action, where that event occurred. The other is where the plaintiff resides, and the third is where the defendant resides. The second of those things, where the plaintiff resides, is the least important of all three. In a criminal case, which is what you're dealing with in your final case scenario, residence has no bearing on determining venue. If somebody commits a crime, we don't care where that person lives. We're going to try him or her in the place where the crime occurred. That is the only real principle involved in determining the venue of a criminal case. That doesn't determine jurisdiction. Then you've got to choose the correct level of court to decide which court has jurisdiction to try the crime. But when you've done that and you're narrowing it down to determine venue, all you really have to look at is where the crime occurred. Now, many of you discussed this when you were talking about the issues in your last discussion board. What are you talking about when you're talking about determining venue? You're looking at where something occurred, and in a civil case, where the parties live. But in a criminal case, where the parties live, remember, does not matter. That's a big hint as to how to determine venue in your final case scenario. So take a look at that case scenario. Think very clearly and carefully about the crime or crimes that might be involved. Prioritize them. Are there petty crimes? Are there things that might be tossed aside because there's one big central crime? Or what is the situation? Who committed the crime or who is alleged to have committed it? Where should they be tried? Is it a state crime or is it a federal crime? That's always another issue in determining not venue but jurisdiction. And then, of course, venue will be a secondary consideration always. I'm at 10 minutes already in this video, so I'm going to be quiet. My voice has held out longer than I thought it would, and I'll let you get on with the work of the week. Please read my written announcement carefully because I explain these same principles in writing for those of you who like to have something in front of you as you learn. And I will see you later. Happy Labor Day.